I'm expecting a lot of people to dislike this video just based on the premise alone, because we're taking The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, probably the most hated game in the series right now, at least until the next one comes out, and then the Zelda cycle kicks in. Skyward Sword becomes the one that everyone praises all of a sudden, and Breath of the Wild is the really bad one. But I'm saying that you can take elements from Skyward Sword and use them to improve Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which is a game that, by the fanbase of its series, while it's still held in contention, is generally regarded a lot higher than Skyward Sword is among Zelda fans. So, get ready for spoilers through the entire game, and I'm basically going to go over a way where I think bringing in one certain idea from Skyward Sword could make all of Xenoblade 2 a lot better. And that one single change is the ability to fly around a sky-based overworld and go and look for different islands that you can explore. Now, obviously, the idea I have for this isn't the way Skyward Sword implemented it. It's just the concept of a cloud overworld kind of thing, except instead of it being a layer of clouds where there's ground underneath, this cloud area is the Cloud Sea. And instead of looking for different floating islands, you're just looking for different smaller titans, that is, smaller ones than all the nations, just that are flying or floating or walking around in it. Now, this basically just adds a ton more exploration than already exists in the main game. First off, most of the titans in Xenoblade 2 are a lot more linear even than areas in the first game, and certainly more so than compared to X. So, yeah, the exploration in 2 is definitely the weakest in the entire series, and adding an explorable quote-unquote overworld would definitely go to fix that. Plus, you could sort of vary up the places you have to go for things like quests. I'll go over some of the ideas I have for different titans that you could find around the Cloud Sea later on, but suffice to say that there are a lot more gameplay ideas that I've come up with that you could only do with this concept and not with anything that's already in the game. So now I'm just going to go over how I would personally change the story in order to incorporate this Cloud Sea overworld. I'll be sticking with the same story, same characters, same plot structure, and pretty much exactly the same cutscenes throughout almost the entire game. Most of what I'm changing will be justifying the method of this overworld existing, with the exception of changing the ending, because I do think something in here could make the ending a bit better than it is too, so it's gonna be exactly the same for the most part. I'm just gonna go over all the changes I'd make to justify this overworld existing and you having a way to traverse it. So first off, everything up through the very end of Chapter 3 stays exactly the same. Vandam dies, and then Mithra comes out, but her coming out has one added effect beyond what it does in the original cutscene. All the extra ether she's sending out everywhere is actually absorbed by Gramps' core crystal, and he's actually able to use that to transform himself into his full-size adult form 500 or whatever years early. Basically, he's able to absorb that, kickstart his growth, jump back to the way he originally was. So now you've got full-size Super Dragon Man Gramps, and he's not going to actually aid in this fight, so that whole battle and cutscene goes on the same, because Alethra Ruin's kind of a priceless ruin place. Also, they're close enough to Fonsamima where he doesn't really want to let himself go and possibly destroy the city or anything, because Mithra's good at aiming her shots and stuff. She's got the brains for knowing exactly how much damage any single hit is going to do. Bridget specifically says this at one point. It's cool. But Gramps is pretty rusty. He's basically only fought once since the Aegis War, and then he got turned tiny and then big again, so he's clearly not going to really know what he's doing as well, and he just doesn't want to damage stuff, so he's going to sit out. He knows Mithra can handle these guys, so all that happens. Then, as you might have guessed, Gramps is going to be your transport vehicle. He's able to fly around, I guess you could use walking as a slower speed, and just go throughout all of Alrest, through the Cloud Sea. You can find all these different titans and things. Now, obviously you would need to change a few things in the story. My main justification for not being able to just go Gramps to places is the fact that the characters aren't really authorized to be entering the ports of any of the specific sovereign nations or that kind of thing with Gramps, because he's not like a registered vessel or any kind of thing. So the first time they visit the different countries, they would actually need to take a specific Titan ship, and obviously Gramps is too big to fly around all the other Titans, so he's not going to be able to fight with you or be used as a method of the character's canonically fast traveling. He's just used to ferry in between places. So I'd imagine that they'd obviously ride Gramps back from Oriya to Argentum, but then they'd need to take a Titan ship over to Mor Ardain, so the whole Gormott thing happens, except they don't steal the other Titan ship, they just fly Gramps there, and all that happens. And basically, I imagine that at some point in the story, Rex just straight up gets Gramps officially registered as a trade ship like he originally was, and then every time they go to a new nation, he uses his abilities as a salvager to basically register himself as, yeah, I'm a trader, this is how this stuff works, you could use me to ferry people, I've got this Titan, he's my ship, all that kind of thing. So pretty much every time they go to a new Titan for the first time, they will need to take an official trade ship, and I imagine Gramps has the ability to swap between forms kind of at will, so that's not too big a deal. Yeah, I guess they would kind of need a ship to get to Genbu in the first place, and you could totally justify the hike across Leftheria with Fan specifically wanting to make sure that they run into Zeke at the harbor there and kind of insisting they cross the long way, not fly Gramps there for whatever reason she so chooses. The only other real big story change before the ending I'd imagine Gramps having, besides they used Gramps to get to the Cliffs of Mortha instead of taking an Ardanian ship and all that kind of thing, what I'd imagine is the time when Genbu is sinking into the clouds, it's about to get destroyed, they're on that really strict time limit. That's the one time Gramps breaks his rule and he decides that, yeah, I'll fly inside a Titan. The belly of Tantal is big enough where I could probably get through all of that stuff without running into that much trouble or worrying about destroying something by accident. So they run out of the rear gate of Theosoir, and he just shifts into his big form. All of them fly down. They get to the ruins where the Fetter is. Obviously, the same battle happens and all that stuff, but I'd actually imagine that instead of cutting back to the inn in the capital of Tantal, you actually have to walk back there. The party beaten, dejected, no Aegis, all that kind of thing. You have to play through that before you can get to that scene in the inn. I think that would also kind of drive that point home a little further than it does in the main game, because you don't really get to feel her absence gameplay-wise until after you get those cutscenes of Rex feeling weak and that kind of thing. They might, like, maybe force Rex into the party so you have to use him and realize that he's definitely weaker without her, that kind of thing. I don't know how you do that, but you do still have to climb throughout that whole lower area. You just do it on the way back from that fight instead of on the way out. I guess you could scale the levels of those bosses a little bit differently so the difficulty isn't changed or whatever, that kind of thing. You could maybe have Gramps pop out and try to fight Ophion before Numa calls Siren in that cutscene, but other than that, you just need a throwaway line with, oh, the currents around the World Tree are too difficult for Gramps to be able to fly them out of Mortha, and that he doesn't want to fly around the World Tree because there are blade bots there that could easily shoot him down. So, beyond that, in the final boss against Ion, I guess you could have him help out a bit, because that chamber is pretty big. He could transform and take a few pot shots. Like, you could probably get some really cool choreography going in the mid-battle cutscene where he pops out of Rex's helmet, jumps over Ion, transforms, shoots a blast down, then goes back into small form before he can get hit by something. So that could be pretty cool. But the main thing that I would change story-wise related to Gramps' shifting size ability thing would be the ending cutscene. I'm basically gonna change things around a little bit, so the whole way that the Aegis came back at the ending with the whole death fake-out thing and all that happened, as well as the real incoherence with Rex's character arc and any of that kind of thing, I'm able to fix that just by using the fact that Gramps can transform. So, first thing is, he takes a big hit in the battle with Ion and gets permanently knocked back into his small mode. You could just have that in the middle cutscene maybe. He does the cool moves, but he does take a hit, and specifically says, okay, I can't transform anymore, you guys are on your own, but you got this, Rex, I believe in you, you can do this. So, pretty much everything goes like that until we get to the bridge part. Because this time, Numa is going to specifically say, Don't worry, Rex, I can do this. I'll give you the core crystal. You're the driver of the Aegis. I know you can do this. You can bring me back after I'm gone. And Rex is able to accept this. It's a bit easier to accept than her just going off and letting herself die. So he's going to be more quick to accept this, realize the strength within himself. He's grown up a lot, and he's able to both trust her and trust himself that he's able to do this. So everything else happens as usual. I guess the party can get to the escape pods a little bit faster since they are not delayed on the bridge for as long or something. I don't know. But everything still happens, and they do end up just falling through the air. When they're falling, Gramps yells to Rex to give him the core crystal. So Rex pulls the core crystal out of his pocket. He throws it across the air to Gramps. Gramps catches it, taps his own crystal with it. He's able to transform back into his big form for one last time. So everything else after that pretty much happens as normal until we get to the part where Rex uses the core crystal to reawaken the two Aegis girls. Except this time, it's just Numa, because the two of them coming back separately is complete bullshit. And there's a bit after that. You know how all the other big nation titans merged themselves into the new landmass? Well, by using the power of the Aegis core crystal to age himself one more time, Gramps has now actually permanently worn out his body, and he is dying. So instead of Rex having to accept the fact that Numa is powerful, she could do things on her own, he has to learn to let her go. He does do that because the situation in which he has to do that is significantly less strong and less difficult for someone to process at the time than it was in the main game. But he also now has to deal with the death of Gramps. And this kind of alludes back to the fact that, yeah, he got that funny fake-out death at the beginning of the game. Yeah, that was played for laughs, but now it's coming around full circle. Gramps can actually reference that scene. Also, I guess you could put in some of the flashbacks, add Vandom to them. That's just kind of a general thing. I might make another video on how Vandom's potential was wasted. But if you're coming from that future video, then just assume that any Vandom-related stuff gets put in this too. It's kind of a thing where Rex's father figures die, or at least fake die. His actual father died. Gramps fake died that one time. Vandom did die. It's just kind of a thing. So this kind of just ties things together, like, don't be a father to this guy. You're gonna end up regretting it at some point. But instead of it being a sad, oh no, this guy died thing, it's more of a passing the torch. Gramps has lived a long, full life. He's glad he was able to know everyone from back during the Aegis War, all that kind of thing, as well as be part of Rex's adventure, to see him grow up. He can say something specifically like that, then reiterate the line he said in the Ion fight, where he's like, yeah, Rex, I know you can do this. You've got this. You don't need me anymore. And unlike the reaction he had to when he first thought Gramps was dead at the beginning of the game, Rex is a lot calmer. He's able to accept that. And Gramps boops into the island somewhere, and he turns to stone, fusing with it. And then the game would end with the full party walking off of Gramps' body onto the new world. Probably have Rex and Numa holding hands or something to solidify that in case people really couldn't tell. And then have the game end then with the camera panning over the new world that they get to explore. That, I think, is a bit of a stronger ending and uses something that I invented for this new gameplay mechanic to tie back into the story and kind of wrap it up a bit better. So with that out of the way, I'm going to just go over quick some of the ideas I have for the Sky Overworld and different things related to that. The first thing is actually pretty obvious because it ties into the opening cutscene in the game where Rex and Gramps are watching a dying titan falling in there. They specifically talk about, yeah, there are probably no people on that because first off, it's small. Second off, you can tell when a titan's dying, but unfortunately some animals did die. So obviously, the larger titans could have some animals on them, so you'd actually be able to fight enemies there, presumably. The bigger they are, obviously, the bigger the enemies. The smaller ones would have bird-like insect ones, that kind of thing. Maybe ones with water could have some fish stuff, but obviously you're not getting some super huge creature on a really small place where the amount of food they have access to is small. But also, I would think that some of the titans you're going around to are actually dying and will die at certain points in the story. Therefore, you won't actually be able to access them after a certain point in time. this definitely goes into the whole Titans are dying off, people are eventually not going to have anywhere to live thing that's kind of not touched on after the whole opening cutscene and then the whole Morardain annexing Gormott thing. So that ties in more to the themes of the game. It gives you more enemies to fight. Obviously, there'd be a bunch of unique monsters thrown around there somewhere, which would be kind of cool. Just you're flying around, you see a unique monster. I'd imagine that you would be able to fight certain flying enemies or enemies that just live in the Cloud Sea on Gramps' back, because it's big enough with the hut for Rex to actually move around and fight that one crust dip. So without the hut, I think he would actually be big enough to move around and fight an enemy as long as that enemy's off of Gramps' back. The cool thing I think about that would be, you can fight an entire full-size Titan. Now, I'm not thinking that you can go Shadow of the Colossus on it and actually take swings at it from in the air, but just imagine a really bigger than Ophion even, Titan unique monster that you can only find by flying around the Cloud Sea, and yeah, you're kind of just able to fight it from Gramps' back while you're flying around it. That would be pretty cool to me. It would probably be the second biggest enemy in the game after Cloud Sea King Ken, so that's nice. A whole new idea. Of course, there'd have to be a small island somewhere nearby with a tombstone for it, so you could, like, actually rematch the thing. But as super bosses go, I think that would be pretty nice. Imagine actually being able to fly out to where the abandoned ship was, go back there, maybe there are items that you can actually only get there. That would be kind of cool. At least have a quest from some archaeologist that wants to go back. That would be pretty obvious. Now, the one real thing is something exploration-wise that even X didn't have, and that is optional towns. There really aren't any towns that you could avoid while you're going throughout the game, so why not just have a small village out somewhere on one of the larger optional Titans? You could even have more side quests. Maybe have a side quest that sends you there so you're never required to go there as part of the main story, but you could still access it. I don't know. I'm imagining a Sky Overworld that's very different to Skyward Sword in that the actual physical space between things are larger. Maybe the only things you can actually see are the main Titans from other things, and obviously the World Tree, but Gramps can move faster, so it's not as agonizingly bad. Yeah, the actual physical distances relative to the size of a person might be larger, but the speed you have is much faster than even the Loftwing's dash, so it's not excruciatingly painful to get there. I would want an all rest that's no more than 10 minutes to get from end to end, and that is assuming it's significantly bigger than the Sky Overworld. You probably have to make the main nation Titans, scale them down a little bit, as well as probably the World Tree too, and just do the same thing that Skyward Sword does with Skyloft, where you get near it and then it transitions into the full model, that kind of thing. Just scaling wise, I guess you could have them full size, but then you'd still dock out a port if you flew into them, that kind of thing. I'm not sure how the actual flying controls would work, but I'm sure you could get it to work pretty easily, and that not being a big deal. Plus, maybe even have smaller Titans or trade ships buy stuff that's really rare out there, get more quests. I'd imagine that stuff out in the Cloud Sea Overworld, you could throw in things like the generic monster quests and that kind of thing from Xenoblade 1. Not necessarily because there were anything specifically cool or specifically missed, but just to give you a couple more rewards in terms of money and EXP for exploring the Cloud Sea, that kind of thing, as well as possibly giving you quest descriptions that push you in a certain direction. Like, if there's a cool thing on this island that you might not realize is interesting and you might not stop at if you're flying by normally, we'll give you a quest that specifically mentions something a little bit to the south of Morardain or whatever, and have that be an incentive to go there. You might find a cool ruin, that kind of thing. I'd imagine the map for this would be something more Wind Waker-y than Xenoblade Chronicles X, where you just have a certain amount of space where it's divided into. You might go hexagons again just to keep it with the X thing, and there's one point of interest in each thing, with the exception of maybe, again, the whole super boss with the little island with the tombstone, like that. But you're able to fill out the map that way. Every time you're required to go to a Titan as part of the story, you're just warped there. That becomes like a big node on the big Cloud Sea map. I guess you wouldn't really be able to do the thing where Titans change positions like they do in canon, but you could probably explain that away at some point in the story, and have that not be too big a deal. But just in general, imagine the possibilities. You could have traders come in from outside of Allrest, have Allrest be effectively a continent, in the bigger Cloud Sea. It's the most important one because it's by the World Tree, and the World Tree is the reason the world is the way it is. Just imagine, they could be human or Napon, but just, I came here from a far-off land, Titans away from Allrest. Just think of the world building. That alone could justify a sidequel in the same universe, like the Golden Country, but set at the same time, and just places away from Allrest. I don't know. My mind is going a mile a minute with different ideas I'd have for things that you could do with this Cloud Sea overworld with tons of smaller Titans, other areas to explore. If you want me to just brain dump different ideas and things, then say that in the comments. I might make a follow-up video to this, but yeah, we already know as a fact Torna the Golden Country won't be like that, and we kind of do know that it only has just Torna and Gormott as per release on the official site, which came out just a little while before I started recording this, actually. And yeah, that's kind of unfortunate. Torna is by far going to be the biggest Titan, and Gormott is changed up, so that's not too big a deal. But we know we're not getting any of this kind of exploration out of anything Xenoblade 2 related, so it's still cool to think of. And until next time, this is Luxon, signing off. As always, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and of course, as always, if you liked the video and you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. There's a like button, there's a comment button. I'd appreciate it if you do both of those, and stick around for more Xenoblade stuff in the future, especially a review of Torna the Golden Country the instant I finish it. So, stick around. See you next video.